it's Miss Melissa with the Oosterhout Free Library and the next installment of Charlotte's Web by E.B. White, illustrated by Garth Williams. It was published by HarperCollins. I'm here in the beautiful first floor of our children's wing. You can see some of our murals and also the pictures of animals we have on the walls right now for our Tales and Tales summer reading program. So here's the next installment of our pig tale. Wilbur is still very sad. The next day was rainy and dark. Rain fell on the roof of the barn and dripped steadily from the eaves. Rain fell in the barnyard and ran in crooked courses down into the lane where thistles and pigweed grew. Rain spattered against Mrs. Eckerman's kitchen windows and came gushing out of the downspouts. Rain fell on the backs of the sheep as they grazed in the meadow. When the sheep tired of standing in the rain, they walked slowly up the lane and into the field. Rain upset Wilbur's plans. Wilbur had planned to go out this day and dig a new hole in his yard. He had other plans, too. His plans for the day went something like this. Breakfast at 6:30. Skim milk, crusts, middlings, bits of donut, wheat cakes with drops of maple syrup sticking to them, potato skins, leftover custard pudding with raisins, and bits of shredded wheat. Breakfast would be finished at 7. From 7 to 8, Wilbur planned to have a talk with Templeton, the rat who lived under his trough. Talking with Templeton was not the most interesting occupation in the world, but it was better than nothing. From 8 to 9, Wilbur planned to take a nap outdoors in the sun. From 9 to 11, he planned to dig a hole or trench and possibly find something good to eat buried in the dirt. From 11 to 12, he planned to stand still and watch flies on the boards, watch bees in the clover, and watch swallows in the air. 12 o'clock, lunchtime. Middlings, warm water, apple parings, meat gravy, carrot scrapings, meat scraps, stale hominy, and the wrapper off a package of cheese. Lunch would be over at 1. From 1 to 2, Wilbur planned to sleep. From 2 to 3, he planned to scratch itchy places by rubbing against the fence. From 3 to 4, he planned to stand perfectly still and think of what it was like to be alive and wait for Fern. At 4 would come supper. Skim milk, provender, leftover sandwich from Lurvy's lunchbox, prune skins, a morsel of this, a bit of that, fried potatoes, marmalade drippings, a little more of this, a little more of that, a piece of baked apple, a scrap of upside-down cake. Wilbur had gone to sleep thinking about these plans. He awoke at 6 and saw the rain, and it seemed as though he couldn't bear it. I get everything all beautifully planned out, and it has to go and rain, he said. For a while he stood gloomily indoors. Then he walked to the door and looked out. Drops of rain struck his face. His yard was cold and wet. His trough had an inch of rainwater in it. Templeton was nowhere to be seen. "Are you out there, Templeton?" called Wilbur. There was no answer. Suddenly Wilbur felt lonely and friendless. "One day just like another," he groaned. "I'm very young. I've no real friend here in the barn. It's going to rain all morning and all afternoon, and Fern won't come in such bad weather. Oh, honestly!" And Wilbur was crying again, the second time in 2 days. At 6:30, Wilbur heard the banging of a pail. Lurvy was standing outside in the rain, stirring up breakfast. "Come on, pig," said Lurvy. Wilbur did not budge. Lurvy dumped the slops, scraped the pail, and walked away. He noticed that something was wrong with the pig. Wilbur didn't want food. He wanted love. He wanted a friend, someone who would play with him. He mentioned this to the goose, who was sitting quietly in a corner of the sheepfold. "Will you come over and play with me?" he asked. "Sorry, sonny, sorry," said the goose. "I'm sitting on my eggs, 8 of them. Gotta keep them toasty warm. I have to stay right here. I'm no flibberty ibbit gibbet. I do not play when there are eggs to hatch. I'm expecting goslings." "Well, I didn't think you were expecting woodpeckers," said Wilbur bitterly. Wilbur next tried one of the lambs. "Will you please play with me?" he asked. "Certainly not," said the lamb. "In the first place, I cannot get into your pen, as I am not old enough to jump over the fence. In the second place, I am not interested in pigs. Pigs mean less than nothing to me." "What do you mean, less than nothing?" replied Wilbur. "I don't think there's any such thing as less than nothing. Nothing is absolutely the limit of nothingness. It's the lowest you can go. It's the end of the line. How can something be less than nothing? If there were something that was less than nothing, then nothing would not be nothing. It would be something, even though it's just a very little bit of something. But if nothing is not nothing, then nothing has nothing is less than." "Oh, be quiet," said the lamb. "Go play by yourself. I don't play with pigs." That is one snobby-looking lamb. Sadly, Wilbur lay down and listened to the rain. Soon he saw the rat climbing down a slanting board that he used as a stairway. "Will you play with me, Templeton?" asked Wilbur. "Play?" said Templeton, twirling his whiskers. "Play? I hardly know the meaning of the word." "Well," said Wilbur, "it means to have fun, to frolic and run and skip and make merry." "I never do those things if I can avoid them," replied the rat sourly. "I prefer to spend my time eating, gnawing, spying, hiding. I am a glutton, but not a merrymaker. Right now I'm on my way to your trough to eat your breakfast, since you haven't got sense enough to eat it yourself." And Templeton, the rat, crept stealthily along the wall and disappeared into a private tunnel that he had dug between the door and the trough in Wilbur's yard. Templeton was a crafty rat, and he pretty much had things his own way. The tunnel was an example of his skill and cunning. The tunnel enabled him to get from the barn to his hiding place, under the pig trough, without coming out into the open. He had tunnels and runways all over Zuckerman's farm, and could get from one place to another without being seen. Usually he slept during the daytime and was abroad only after dark. Wilbur watched him disappear into his tunnel. In a moment he saw the rat's sharp nose poke out from underneath the wooden trough. Cautiously, Templeton pulled himself up over the edge of the trough. This was almost more than Wilbur could stand, on this dreary, rainy day, to see his breakfast eaten by somebody else. He knew Templeton was getting soaked out there in the pouring rain, but even that didn't comfort him. Friendless, dejected, and hungry, he threw himself down in the manure and sobbed. Late that afternoon Lurvy went to Mr. Zuckerman. "I think there's something wrong with that pig of yours. He hasn't touched his food." "Give him 2 spoonfuls of sulphur and a little molasses," said Zuckerman. Wilbur couldn't believe what was happening to him when Lurvy caught him and forced the medicine down his throat. This was certainly the worst day of his life. He didn't know whether he could endure the awful loneliness any more. Darkness settled over everything. Soon there were only shadows and the noises of sheep chewing their cuds, and occasionally the rattle of a cow chain up overhead. You can imagine Wilbur's surprise when, out of the darkness, came a small voice he had never heard before. It sounded rather thin but pleasant. "Do you want a friend, Wilbur?" it said. "I'll be a friend to you. I've watched you all day, and I like you." "But I can't see you," said Wilbur, jumping to his feet. "Where are you, and who are you?" "I'm right up here," said the voice. "Go to sleep. You'll see me in the morning." The night seemed long. Wilbur's stomach was empty and his mind was full, and when your stomach is empty and your mind is full, it's hard to sleep. A dozen times during the night Wilbur woke and stared into the blackness, listening to the sounds and trying to figure out what time it was. A barn is never perfectly quiet. Even at midnight there is usually something stirring. The first time he awoke, he heard Templeton gnawing a hole in the grain bin. Templeton's teeth scraped loudly against the wood and made quite a racket. "That crazy rat," thought Wilbur. "Why does he have to stay up all night grinding his clashes and destroying people's property? Why can't he go to sleep like any decent animal?" The second time Wilbur woke, he heard the goose turning on her nest and chuckling to herself. "What time is it?" Wilbur whispered to the goose. "Probably 11:30," said the goose. "Why aren't you asleep, Wilbur?" "Too many things on my mind," said Wilbur. "Well," said the goose, "that's not my trouble. I have nothing at all on my mind, but I've too many things under my behind. Have you ever tried to sleep while sitting on 8 eggs? 8 eggs? 8 eggs?" "No," replied Wilbur. "I suppose it is uncomfortable. How long does it take for a goose egg to hatch?" "Approximately 30 days, all told," answered the goose. "But I cheat a little. On warm afternoons I just pull a little straw over the eggs and go out for a walk." Wilbur yawned and went back to sleep. In his dreams he again heard the voice saying, "I'll be a friend to you. Go to sleep. You'll see me in the morning." About half an hour before dawn, Wilbur woke and listened. The barn was still dark. The sheep lay motionless. Even the goose was quiet. Overhead on the main floor nothing stirred. The cows were resting, the horses dozed. Templeton had quit work and gone off somewhere on an errand. The only sound was a slight scraping noise from the rooftop, where the weather vane swung back and forth. Wilbur loved the barn when it was like this, calm and quiet, waiting for light. "The day is almost here," he thought. Through a small window a faint gleam peered. One by one the stars went out. Wilbur could see the goose a few feet away. She sat with her head tucked under a wing. Then he could see the sheep and the lambs. The sky lightened. Oh, beautiful day! It is here at last. Today I shall find my friend. Will Wilbur has some hope now, and our next installment is just wonderful. So I hope I'll see you next time from the Oosterhout Free Library. Bye-bye.